Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, highlights from our annual C4ISRNET Conference, addressing some of the major topics facing the Pentagon and defense industry today. This year, our conference explored space, the connected battlefield, and digital infrastructure. On tap, we've got conversations with experts on a range of issues. We'll hear about cutting-edge communications equipment and tactical radios, and who's getting them. And a dogfight between two autonomous fighters? It's closer than you think. We recap our conversation on artificial intelligence and machine learning, featuring the Director of Research from the Air Force's Test Pilot School. We also hear from one of the Army's top executives developing the service's intel and sensing technology. We've got an array of interviews and analysis on everything from multi-domain operations to space operations and next-generation networks in this special episode of Defense News Weekly. So don't go away. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Colin Demarest. Many of the leading minds in the C4 space gathered online last week for our annual C4ISRNET Conference, and the experts and analysts dug into a range of topics facing military and industry leaders looking to the near future. Today, we bring you highlights from that event. Up first, Mark Kitts is the Program Executive Officer for Intelligence, Electronic Warfare, and Sensors. His years of experience in leading the development of cutting-edge technologies have helped our forces maintain a competitive advantage on the battlefield. Here's part of that conversation. And so these investments, they come after a bit of post-Cold War atrophy, I guess you could call it, in tech and techniques, and that's including in the Army, the Air Force, the other services. Should these investments, or should this problem have been recognized sooner, and should these investments have been made, closer to when they were recognized, or are we behind the ball? Are we right where we need to be?
Yeah, I think that's a challenging question to answer, right? Should we have been investing in electronic warfare prior? We have been investing in electronic warfare. All of our counter-IED capabilities that were in Afghanistan and Iraq were electronic warfare capabilities, right? So we have certainly changed what we were focused on in terms of protecting forces and in terms of the technology of electronic warfare. I think now our focus on investment in electronic warfare was building sort of windows of operation in spectrum, which is very different than going after IEDs or going after protection of a ground combat force or a patrol. So I think we've been investing in electronic warfare. I think our investments now are very different as we go to a multi-domain operations fight. You also mentioned Indo-PACOM, right? What is the Army's role in these vast sort of distances, right? And is the Army really going to deliver tactical electronic warfare in that domain? Maybe. I think those are some of the investments that we're looking at, is how can we get that long range effect? I also think that our foundational investment in understanding the data environment, right? Pulling data from the intel community, pulling data from the Navy who may be operating in Indo-PACOM, being able to provide our commanders sort of that insight of the environment is absolutely critical. And I think I think those investments are sort of unique electronic warfare investments to the Army. I wouldn't say we are necessarily right where we need to be. I think we are a little bit behind in our electronic warfare investments when it comes to Indo-PACOM, when it comes to long range effects. But we got some very positive momentum in our terrestrial layer system for the brigade, in our terrestrial layer system for echelons above brigade. And so I'm hopeful and I'm very focused on delivering those capabilities here in the near future, Colin.
So you mentioned Titan and you mentioned TLS, so I'd like to stay on those points. Maybe we can start with Titan, which is the Tactical Intelligence Targeting Access Node. Do you have an update on that project, and maybe more specifically, what progress are you seeing with those Raytheon and Palantir prototypes?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking, right? And again, we see that as a foundational JADC2 investment for the Army, right? And how we're going to deliver a capability to the joint services is through our Titan capability. And as you mentioned, right now we're in a competitive prototype phase with Raytheon and Palantir. In fact, both companies are delivering capability to Hunter Army Airfield outside of Savannah, Georgia, where we have soldiers from across the Army doing a soldier touch point on both of their capabilities. And so we're actually leveraging soldier input in how we're going to define the future of that capability and how we're going to go through a contractual down select to get after the capability that will define the future of our Army. And so we're really excited to have soldiers involved in that. Through the summer, we will go through a developmental test of the prototypes, running 3 real-world scenarios, leveraging both manned ISR, overhead ISR, and ground-based ISR, leveraging joint service technologies in order to build confidence that we're selecting the right prototype to move forward into a production situation for our Titan capability. So really excited about that. I also wanted to mention that we built a prototype for first MDTF to go after space-based capability. We call it our Titan pre-prototype. That recently deployed with first MDTF out to the Philippines and is actually helping support first MDTF in their operations in Indo-PACOM. So we're seeing a lot of progress in the Titan program. However, a lot of work to be done as we get to sort of the summer, getting through this developmental test environment and building out the first real prototypes of Titan. So thanks for that question, Colin. Appreciate the opportunity to highlight. And I would sort of amplify that the way we've structured the Titan program, it is not the last opportunity for industry to deliver capability to Titan. We have a dual pathway, so it is a software acquisition pathway and a major middle tier acquisition. And our commitment is to integrate yearly capability into our software acquisition capability for Titan. And so for our industry partners that are out there on Titan that see this competition evolving, there will be significant on-ramps for our Titan program for the future of our Titan capability, because we have got to adapt to the future threat. We've got to adapt to the future environment. We can't go through a cookie cutter production environment for our Titan capability. So thanks for letting me highlight that, Colin.
For sure. So you and other officials have said Titan is, a keystone in the Army's JADC2 approach. I'm curious how so. Maybe you could explain to our viewers what makes it so special, what it's actually doing, and how soldiers will down the road be using it.
Yeah, I think it would be insightful. So today we fly manned ISR or unmanned ISR with dedicated ground links and dedicated infrastructure, right? Their own database, their own data store, their own way to interact the data with the network, their own way to interoperate with counterpart ISR or counterpart platforms. And that makes integration of data really complicated. It also puts a large onus on the analyst to find data, to do cognitive integration of data, to understand, hey, if the Air Force is flying a rivet joint, I got to go find that data somewhere, right? It does not just come to me in a meaningful way. And so the concept, at a very simplistic way, the concept of Titan is to really build a capability that can ingest any sensor data, right? Organic to a unit or not, whether that's an Air Force ISR capability, whether that's a weather station, you name the data source or the data type, Titan should integrate to that data source and provide the analyst the ability to integrate that data, visualize that data, and provide the commander with a meaningful assessment or a meaningful answer to the question. Titan is also foundational to our long-range precision fires and sensor-to-shooter architectures. So when we are collecting and we are developing targets, we want to be able to use every data source available to us. And so being able to aggregate that data in a meaningful way in one place is really critical for why we think the joint services are going to really leverage Titan and why the Army sees Titan as a foundational investment to JADC2.
And so collecting, kind of analyzing and dispersing that information, that's really going to rely on artificial intelligence or some sort of pattern recognition, correct?
Yeah, and I think artificial intelligence, machine learning, our ability to build new visualization techniques, simple things like being able to start up and troubleshoot our ground station in a really meaningful way that soldiers can interact with. These are the important things that we're hearing from soldiers when we do these soldier touch points on Titan. And we've got to then incorporate that with our industry partners from Raytheon and Palantir to be able to build a meaningful capability set. Absolutely, Colin. Yeah.
You can see that and all the other panels on c4isrnet.com/video. Tactical radios. You can't live with them, you can't get chow or fires without them. When we return, we see what's in store for the Army's tactical radio programs. At our C4ISRNet conference this year, I spoke to two leaders with a strong history within the Army's Program Executive Office Command, Control, and Communications Tactical. Colonel Shermone Dion is the project manager for tactical radios, and Matt Mayer manages the interoperability, integration, and services program. They have a ton of experience, and I spoke to them both. So this capability set venture started with 2021. Now we're in 2023 with capability set 23. Could you maybe go into what makes 23 special? What are those high notes for the tech that these soldiers will be using day to day that'll make them better soldiers?
So when you're dealing with what some of the high tech that we actually are pushing out in 23, you think things like variable height antennas, which are essentially antennas on a drone, right? That raise up, a unit can employ it. It has, it's able to provide range extension for both voice and data via the TSM network. It's also able to be dropped and moved a lot quicker than back in the old days when we had to erect, old antennas called the OE254, which took 2 or 3 soldiers to do. It popped up and then it was only SINGAR's waveform or only one waveform at a time. So these things are enabling units to move faster, to mask their location better, and to enable, going back to what Matt was saying, simplicity. One of the big pushes that we're doing towards simplicity is, we're looking at what does the classification need to be at echelon. We think that at the battalion and below, we can shift away from a network that's primarily secret type 1 encryption to a network that's SBUE, sensitive but unclassed but encrypted. So still protected with the latest AE256 encryption, which is pretty much can't be broken right now. But still simpler, because that also opens the gateway to integrate partners easier. Right now, when we integrate partners, we spend a lot of time, a lot of ConOps energy trying to either have LNOs, which are individuals that are not, working on missions and they're just translating, or we spend a lot of time with standing up whole enclaves of servers that are now able to integrate partners. And so with SBUE, we start to tear down some of those extra capabilities that they often change in each theater as well, right? So you can't use the MPE in the Pacific, the same capabilities there as you would in Europe. So lowering the classification, making it easier for commanders to interoperate with partners is critical.
Thank you. I'll throw this one to both of you again, I guess. Capability set 21 is on its tail end, really rolling out. 23 is the hot new product. What lessons were learned from 21 that were applied to 23? And were there any surprises there?
Yeah, so I guess I would say, Colin, that one of the challenges that we were faced with capability set 21 is, you remember, we fielded not only a lot of program of record type kit, but we also fielded a lot of new commercial off-the-shelf technology that had never been tested in field environments before. And I think you probably also remember the process, the rigorous acquisition process that we sort of defined for the network. We didn't get to go through all of the events that we wanted to go through for 21 because of COVID and other factors, unit availability, things like that. And so I think one of the things we're really focused on now as we move in 23 and 24 is not only providing an integrated set of network capabilities that all interoperate well together, but that it's also been, fully vetted through a series of operational test environments, right? In fact, you were out at some of them, right? We went out and did 2 major operational assessments and a live fire exercise with units and soldiers. They took it out into the field and tested against peer threat capability. We've done cyber assessments of the network now. We've done adversarial assessments of the network now, and a lot of good feedback from that. You asked about, what did we change or improve? I think one of the big changes is the integrated nature of all those capabilities. Those unproven commercial technologies are now proven, right? And they're integrated. And when we found challenges with a particular waveform or with interoperability or a particular capability, we were able to correct those. And so a lot of those systems have sort of been improved since 21 to better interoperate with the rest of the systems in the network. I think the big challenge now is it's still a lot of systems, right? I think what we need to do is really focus on what can we do for units and soldiers to make it easier for them to plan, manage, and control the network. And so we're looking at things like shared data repositories, for example, or shared graphical user interfaces, things where they can do multiple things from a few central locations. And I think that's part of the strategy going forward, is to really take a lot of that technology and make it much easier to use. So they have, again, the same level of capability.
Thanks, Colin. We'll see you next week. To catch that and the rest of the conference, head to c4isrnet.com/video. And when we return, our personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives us tips on financing home improvements. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives you the options for home improvement loans.
It doesn't matter how long you've been in your home, repairs will need to happen. It could be a small fix or an entire room remodel. Making changes can be exciting. All that excitement does come with a cost, but planning can help you keep that happy feeling from the beginning to the end of your renovations. It just depends on the size of your project. For small but costly repairs, a personal loan may be the way to go. With a personal loan, you can get the cash to cover needed or emergency repairs quickly. Just be sure you can pay it off within the shorter terms that may also come with this type of loan. You're also really going to want to shop around to get the lowest rate possible. For larger projects, maybe tap into the equity you have in your home to help make major improvements with a home equity loan. These loans let you use your equity as collateral, so they're easier to qualify for. And you have the option of choosing to get your funds in a lump sum or in a line of credit you can use over time. Talk to your lender about which might be best for your needs. With the right loan to help you and a well-planned project budget, you could be happy making repairs or remodeling from start to finish.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, steer your destroyer towards Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com, as well as defensenews.com and C4ISRNet. Stay with me now.com. And to be the forward observer with the strongest binos, sign up for our early bird brief for stories sent to your inbox. It's also in audio. Check out the podcast version, out each weekday. And if social media is where you get your headlines, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And stay tuned. When we return, we hear how machine learning and artificial intelligence are advancing fighter jet technology. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly with more of our C4ISRNet conference coverage. Artificial intelligence and machine learning has an increasingly critical role in the modern battlefield. As the Pentagon continues to invest in the technology, we take a look at the resources necessary to maintain advantages over adversaries. I spoke with 2 executives about this topic. I was curious what the latest on the X-62 Vista is. There was reporting earlier this year that there were some flight tests. Has there been any additional in-flight testing, upgrades, or anything of that sort?
Yeah, so when we flight tested with Vista back in December, we were about 2/3 of the way through the upgrade of the vehicle, and it was the first chance we had to go get some data with a real AI agent, and we were very successful. Since then, we've done a pretty major software upgrade on the vehicle. The aircraft landed about 30 minutes ago from a flight test that it was doing, that we're doing this week for a campaign this week. We've got another campaign started in May. Then the aircraft will go down for some routine maintenance and checks. And then this fall, we've got another, I know of at least one other flight test campaign going on. And then we'll also be doing another software upgrade as well. So it's a busy time for us. We've got a lot going on.
Busy's good. So what are some of those lessons learned that you could share with us from that testing in December, I think you said, that are now being folded into these future events?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the lessons we're learning are lessons that all of us kind of need to be reminded on occasion. So, for example, we had an issue last week where we had a particular AI agent that was looking at a particular button in the cockpit to know when to turn on or turn off. And that button, the way it works is you press it and there's a rising edge on it. And then when you release, there's the falling edge. And if you don't catch it just right, you miss the key to turn it on or off. We had a separate system set up that kind of interpreted that for our customer, and they chose to read the button directly. And as a result, we had some miscommunication during a ground test of whether it was active or not. And that's an example of just, I was talking about earlier, integrating stuff that's being done purely in a simulator lab into a real airplane. So there's some lessons like that we kind of help our customers sort out as they're transitioning. As far as the flying itself, we are learning a lot. I think one of the main lessons that we're trying to carry forward is when we fly some of these AI systems, not to evaluate it as if it was a human being. So just because a pilot would do X or Y doesn't mean the AI has to do X or Y. It may be able to come up with an answer that's completely different that we never would have thought of. So we're really trying to be open and good observers as to what's going on, knowing that sometimes it may not do what we would consider to be the right thing, but trying to understand what it did to see if maybe it's found a different way that we hadn't thought of.
How do you measure successful implementation of AI or ML? What are some of those milestones people in your business keep an eye out for, or maybe defense industry should keep an eye out for? And Mr. Patel, if you want to lead us off on that.
Well, that is a fantastic question. I think the definition is evolving and is probably being defined now in a lot of cases. I think success will depend on who you are from an organizational standpoint. So success from a, say, T&E, test and evaluation community perspective, it's different than from an operational perspective, because one is just testing for just considerations. One is just testing the performance of the capability and its effect on the operational environment. The other one is really focused on, did that model actually improve my workflow? Did that answer my question? And then you have different, again, organizational understanding and influence from financial perspective, right? So how successful I was able to create this model, but it cost me $10 million, but it wasn't as effective as we needed it to. So there's so many different dimensions to defining success that I think we're still kind of figuring out how that happens. But I also believe that the Army and the DoD is putting in policies, things like the adaptive acquisition framework that looks at software pathways, that looks at ways for us to really identify metrics on those success criteria. So I think we're going to start defining some of those as we have more AI-enabled programs.
For our particular system with Vista, I have no problem going and coding something up in my office this afternoon and flying it on my airplane tomorrow morning. We really are about risk reduction and taking things that are really low technology readiness levels and elevating them. So I'm perfectly happy taking something that's really sketchy and trying it out, knowing that I've got the safeties built in to catch me and keep me safe.
This person asks, what does it take to properly train autonomy or machine-powered agents? How much data, time, tests, fidgeting, retest, that sort of thing does it take?
I don't think a machine learning program really ever ends like software. Software never really dies. If you're really doing machine learning, you're going to constantly get new types of data. Things are going to happen in the operational environment that's going to cause us to kind of question and retrain things.
Well, thank you guys for those answers and your time here today. It's much appreciated, and we are done for the day here. I've enjoyed this conversation. I thank both of you guys for joining us again. There's a lot more from the conference, and you can catch it all at c4isrnet.com/videos. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.